What is up, guys? Welcome to another Tuesday, another episode of Tradesmen Talk. I'm sure all of you have been super excited when awaiting this episode, and it has now come.
I mean,
And I'm here
experience
again
with Tim.
What's that?
I said after that amazing experience with Tim, I don't see how anybody could be doing anything other than sitting at the edge of their seat.
Yeah, I'm gonna do whatever we can to try to get more guests like that. I thought that was a great experience for us and for the listeners to see other people building businesses in different trades.
Yeah.
And just to emphasize that there's opportunities in all of these trades, and you can build a very successful and even multi-seven-figure business in just about any home service, as long as you put systems in place and you focus on building a business. And kind of leads into the topic of today's call, where a lot of home service professionals, they often find themselves building a high-paying job for themselves rather than a business that can work without their day-to-day involvement, or with building a business that doesn't rely on them doing everything in the business. And though that might be appropriate starting off, because you got to make do with what you have in a sense, but it can often be easier to stay in that position than it is to go through a little bit of change and some learning curves to build that business that operates a little bit more self-sufficiently. And so want to deep dive into that topic today. Before we get too deep into it though, how was your week?
My week's been great. We had a little car trouble, but other than that, pretty much wins all around. Shopping, Austin did a little over 15,000 just from Monday to Wednesday. So yeah, not bad for a 3-day stint. And yeah, the new guy we've been training up has been absolutely incredible. And he has two friends that he said are just like him, but actually already more skilled than he is, which is exactly what we want to hear. So we've got we're letting one guy is leaving, so we're bringing on. He'll officially be our second full-time guy, and then we're bringing on a third, starting halfway through April. Okay. So, yeah, we're really excited. We know the mark, and kind of the goal since day one was we want to have 4 jobs a week by about the 1 year mark. And if we miss it and we're only doing 3, it's still a $50,000 a month business. It's not like the end of the world.
Yeah.
But
with 4 jobs a week, you may get very close to that kind of 20K a week in revenue, 7-figure run rate.
That's the goal.
With a $4,000 to $5,000 average. Some of your jobs are much larger than 5,000. Did you say you just closed $11,000 job?
Yeah, 11.9. And that's one of the things that we're seeing. We're getting, obviously we've got good reviews. We're getting decent referrals, but since we set the business up from the very beginning to look, our business looks bigger than it is in a lot of ways because we have all the tools, we have all the systems, we have all the marketing. And so we're getting a lot of bigger deals, a lot of bigger clients. We've had a builder approached us recently and asked if we'd be willing to come do jobs for them. And they said that, they're probably going to have somewhere between 2 to 4 jobs a month they need us to do.
That's awesome.
Almost a whole crew right there. So yeah, it's taken off.
That same opportunity came to one of our members the other day. I received an email from one of our members that was approached by a construction company, and they're doing kitchens, and they want to bring the cabinetry to this. Our student's name's Andrew. They want to bring the cabinetry to Andrew, and Andrew will spray it all in the shop. They come and pick it back up and do their own install.
Nice.
And love doing that. As long as you can get a good understanding of what the pricing is going to be like. It's just a little bit easier because you don't have to do all the prep in the house.
Yeah. Which is the tedious part. It's the part people don't like. One of the things that we thought was kind of interesting is, this guy is very good at what he does, because, the first thing he did was he actually quiz Logan, what are the tools you're using? What are the materials you're using? Tell me about your process a little bit. And then he was like, all right, I can tell you've got it together. And so, one of the big things when you work with a construction company, or like, flippers are tough sometimes because, depending on the quality of house that they're flipping, right? If they're making a really nice new $1 million home, then they want high quality. If they're polishing a turd, they're going to try and nickel and dime you. And so One of the things that we liked about it is, we told them kind of our pricing and said, hey, if we get past a certain point, if we're doing more than, 4 jobs a month, we're happy to negotiate some with you, this kind of our current price. And it doesn't make sense for us to have a huge price reduction because we can keep our guys busy. Right.
Yeah. Because you've built the systems, you're not relying on word of mouth. Word of mouth is always great. We love referrals, but we don't want to build a business that relies on referrals because those aren't always as predictable as having systems in place that can generate jobs as close as possible to being on demand.
Yep. Yeah. It's impossible to plan without consistency.
Yep.
And that makes it very hard to hire. And even if you do hire, like if you can't provide consistency for your guys, you're not going to be able to keep quality people around. And so
it'll be stressful for everyone.
Yeah. It's just, you're forever balancing between I can't keep the quality of guys who don't have enough jobs. And it's just, it's not a pleasant situation, but we've been really lucky, man. I say
and skilled. It's not a whole lot of luck because, between you and I, we've set up now over 50 different shops.
That's true.
So for us to continue to grow our own teams, it just gets easier and easier because we've done it so many times. And the other members and partners that we work with, we're all learning collectively. And so because we have similar challenges, if there's something to be figured out, it gets figured out very quickly. And then we apply that lesson to the next team that we launch. And, we very much practice what we preach. And these home service trades, they're very profitable when you build them right. And so, of course, you and I continue to do that as much as we possibly can. And then carving the path and teaching people how to fish, if you will, so they can build their own business and grow their own existing businesses. And, that kind of leads us to this podcast. And so, let's kind of go deeper into the subject where instead of finding yourself building a high paying job, meaning you're kind of doing everything yourself and evolving that opportunity into a self-sufficient business. You kind of talked about a way to think about it earlier before we started the call. Why don't we kind of go into that?
Yeah. I mean, so conceptually it's, most people, they don't have an actual business. What they own is a job, right? And there's a huge difference between owning a business and owning a job. The biggest difference being, like when you went on your homeless millionaire trip, right?
I still have my homeless attire on.
Right. And the business does fine without it because you're no longer the one that's customer facing, right?
Right.
Otherwise, we'd expect you to trim that up, and probably me too, right?
I don't have to do as much sales, but it was all accredited to building the systems and aligning incentives so that the people within the system aspire to do the same thing.
Yep.
And so as they evolve, the system itself develops and progresses, and then they're able to multiply themselves because they've watched me do it. I've helped them go through that similar journey. And then the business is not only self-sufficient, but becomes self-replicating.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because when you look at people trying to make that transition, because the reality is, unless you have the funds to pay somebody else to do all of that work in the beginning, which is, can be very expensive, realistically, when you first start your business, you are going to just own a job. Usually, when people are considering cabinet startup, I tell them pretty regularly, I'm like, look, man, you're going to be the primary everything, the primary marketer, the primary salesperson, the primary accountant. Like, you're going to do everything for a minimum of 6 months. And we're going to put things in place to make it a little bit easier for you, but it's going to be 50, 60-hour weeks. And then after 6 months, you might be ready to hire. And then you got systems in place for that too. But I think, for a lot of business owners, they get so caught up in that day-to-day, and they figure out how to do everything themselves in a system that kind of works, that they've got managed somewhere in the back of their head. And, they try not to drop too many balls. I heard somebody said it was like the equivalent of trying to walk while you're juggling, right? And then eventually you hire somebody else to come juggle the balls. But if they've not done that before, if they're not used to walking while juggling, then, typically they're going to trip up. It's going to cost you money, and then you're going to have to let them go, or the work experience is bad, so they quit, and you're back to square one, which is, the thing I hear most from seasoned contractors that still have a job is they're like, well, hiring's just not worth it. Or my favorite is, nobody wants to work right now. Like, you work every day. So I'm different. Like, okay, yeah, you're the only person in all of America that wants to work, I guess.
It's one of those things that people, a lot of contractors that might be working for themselves by themselves right now, it eventually turns into doing that out of choice, because maybe they've tried, like you mentioned, they've tried to hire people in the past and it didn't necessarily work out. And so they developed limiting beliefs around the idea of hiring people being too hard or not worthwhile or more challenged than it's worth. And so they kind of stay in their position because they can be comfortable enough. But a lot of people go into these trades, and I certainly encourage new people that are going into these trades to have the intention of building an actual business and to go through everything in the business yourself. I certainly encourage as well, because it helps you set realistic expectations. And you don't necessarily have to be the best in every role of the business, but most home service businesses are very simple. And so there is a likelihood that you can at least become competent in every role within the business. As you mentioned, marketing, accounting, is certainly the technical roles, management, at least learning to manage yourself, building discipline, doing all of those things for at least a short period of time to build a sense of familiarity, to even have a level of competence, is going to allow you to hire people effectively, because now you know what you're actually looking for in a person. You know the responsibilities that those roles entail, and you'll be able to ask better questions regarding those roles because you've been in that position yourself. And it also helps with training, because some of those roles that you find yourself in, you're going to be pretty good at, whether it's the technical aspect or marketing or business development, sales. You're going to be good in some of these areas. And so you'll have some value to add when it comes to training people. So there's just a lot of benefits to doing everything yourself, at least for a short period of time. But as your business grows in certain areas, you're just not going to be able to do everything.
Right.
You might be willing to, but you're just not going to be able to over a long enough period of time. And so, focusing on some of the things you may be really good at or you may not enjoy, just determining those areas are going to help you in deciding who to hire first.
Yeah. Well, and then once you do decide to hire, like, the fact that the systems makes it easier to find someone that's capable of doing it. But more often than not, you're going to have to figure out a way to get those systems out of your head and into your actual business. Like, it needs to be something that anybody can come in and pick up.
Right.
And I think that's the tough part, because if you're used to doing it all yourself, and you're used to coming in and you're doing the work, and you're in this process of go, like, sometimes I think that people look at tasks like that. It's like, it's really low on the totem pole, right? So it's like, yeah, I need to write out all the processes and I'll get to it. And then they don't. And then they get to a point where they have to have help and they need help right now. And so they hire somebody, but they don't have those systems. And that person comes in and flounders. And I know, because I've done it, and it's not fun to watch. It's not fun for them. It's not fun for you, the business owner. It's expensive.
Yeah, you end up losing money because the person's not properly trained, and so they're not doing things properly. You might find yourself redoing things, or things are slipping through the cracks. And so you waiting till you absolutely need someone to hire someone is going to be wrong for several ways, because you're just developing a desperation or an over reliance on getting a return out of this investment, which is hiring someone.
Yep.
And so being prepared before you hire someone certainly is a good idea, knowing exactly what you need them to do, and then having a clear way of communicating how to do it. And doing it vocally or verbally is not going to be the most effective way, because you're going to get frustrated quickly as the manager, having to repeat yourself over and over.
Yep.
And the student, if you will, is not going to learn very quickly, because he has to rely on you telling him over and over. And so having simply a step-by-step process for how you want something done written down is going to be a much better way for them to learn, because they can actually study it, And if they have questions, they can reference that document first before they ask you the same questions over and over. And so it just becomes a more effective way to train someone and create a process around these different roles.
Right.
But it's hugely important. And it's one of those, like you mentioned, one of those tedious things that a lot of people push off or procrastinate on. But it's crucial. If you're going to build a business, you have to have a step-by-step way of doing some of these things. And if you are trying to hire for a role that you aren't fully competent on, or that you know requires a lot more skill than you have to contribute, then when you do find someone that is better than you, make sure you sit them down so you can create a system with them.
Right.
Set those expectations in the interview so that no one gets caught off guard, but take the time to sit down with that individual. Maybe it's a salesperson and you're super good at plumbing, but you're not a people person. And so putting you in a sales environment isn't going to be good for anyone more than likely, but you understanding some of the sales or understanding components of the sales process, like how you're going to charge certain things, that's great. That's a good start. But maybe you get someone that's a little bit more people oriented to do the actual sales appointments for you, and you both can collaborate on creating a sales process that is written down. And you're going to be so glad you did that, because when or if that salesperson decides to transition out of your business, if you have that document of a sales process, finding a new salesperson is going to be so much more easier because you have a proven process that works, and it doesn't rely on you to teach it. It relies on the process, not the person.
Oh, I mean, dude, that experience is probably like one of the main reasons why when businesses shrink back down, they never come back. Because if you hire somebody for your sales, almost the worst thing that could happen to you is you hire somebody that's an absolute rock star, but they don't leave any of their processes. They don't.
Can you repeat that? Your video's chopping up.
Let me see. Yeah, I see that. My connection is now unstable.
Seems to be good now, but I pretty much missed everything you just said.
Oh, well, so it's like if you hire somebody and they're a rock star, right? One of the worst things that can happen is they come in, they crush it, everything's going perfectly, and you're really happy, but you haven't taken the time to develop those SOPs. When that person then leaves, that whole side of your business just collapses. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a structure in place, it's a house of cards essentially. And when a large business comes to a stop, what I think a lot of people don't realize sometimes is larger businesses have much larger liabilities. And so when it comes to a full stop, it can be dangerous. And so there's this need to do that. But the other thing is, in order to make the progress towards doing that, there's a decision that people have to make. It's like if your business hasn't reached a certain level, or if you are unable to hire people, or if when you've hired people in the past, for example, it has gone badly, oftentimes we blame that on other people. Same thing with marketing. I hear lots of contractors will tell us that systems that we use, right, to produce $20,000, $30,000 a month, every single month consistently, they're like, oh yeah, those don't work.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I mean, is there a chance maybe that the problem is not the systems, right? If all these other people are making lots of money from it, but you are not, it could be that you're the problem. And that's hard to accept, because most of the time the identity as a contractor is like, I'm a really good contractor. And you're like, great. That has nothing to do with being a really good business owner. They're unrelated.
That kind of opens up the door for another mindset conversation, because that should be a fundamental rule of thumb for anyone going into business, regardless of the industry, is everything is your fault.
100%.
And if you can't determine how it's your fault, that's okay. But you need to at least understand that it is your fault, and it's worth figuring out how you could have done something differently to create a different result. If a guy comes in your business and pretends to be your best friend for 2 years and then convinces all your technicians to leave at the same time, there's no value in blaming it on that individual that you observed coming in to the business and stealing your guys, or however you want to describe it.
Right.
It's much more worth your while to figure out how you contributed to that outcome and what you can do differently to create a different result. And that mentality is going to apply to every part of your business. And so if something happens to your business and it produces a negative result, regardless of who all was involved, it's still your fault. You break it all the way down, you're the one that hired that person.
Yeah.
So if you're going to blame it on that person, well, you're the one that hired them.
And to call you out a little bit, that actually happened.
Yeah, it did happen in a way to me. I mean, again, I look at how I contributed to that. I created, for those listening, I did have to start over a couple times in my business, and it did come down to the way that I was building the business. It could be observed from the outside looking in that it was someone else's fault. But there's no value in me, putting a flag on that idea. It really came down to me creating the culture that was conducive to create the results that I wanted. And if I got results I didn't want, then I was creating that in some way or another. And so anyone who's in business, it's just a good automatic rule to just assume everything is your fault.
Yep.
And not the person you hire, not the lack of effectiveness with your Facebook ads or your home advisor leads, or whatever, your truck getting hit 3 times in 2 years. Like it's not anyone else's fault. And if you can't figure it out, that's fine, but figure out how you can at least change the future results.
Yep.
And where you can contribute to a better outcome.
Is the only way to maintain power or control, really, because if the same thing with like your mood, right? If somebody comes in and says something shitty to you and you're like, oh man, that person made me mad, and then you're mad all day, it's like, okay, so what you're telling me is that person can power over you the entire day. Right. I would like to meet this voodoo doctor and figure out what exactly happened. Yeah. And it's the same in your business, because if you had just said in that moment, like, oh man, this whole thing shut down, like I can't hire people because they're evil, right? I can't trust other people, and that's the problem. It's like, or you could just build a system where the trust is caked into it, right? Have them sign a do not compete. And
right.
Lots of, a lot of times the fixes aren't that hard once you know to look for them, but you won't even begin the journey to look for them if you don't understand that you're the one that has to do it.
Right. And a huge benefit that I kind of was blessed with, I guess we could say, is knowing that even though I didn't have necessarily a day-to-day mentor within cabinet refinishing, there's a lot of similar challenges regardless of the trade that are being in solutions that are being created in other industries that I could apply to my own. And so I started realizing that I can look at the challenges that I have and try to see where other people in other industries are having similar challenges and how they solve the problem, and figuring out how I can apply that solution to my own business. And so that kind of translates to when I first was hiring people, it was all through coming from my head. I was just telling people what to do, and I was having to repeat myself, whatever, until, now when I hire someone, I literally give them a binder and they have a stack of paperwork to fill out. They have a stack of study materials. They have schedules on there. They have everything in my head put into this binder. And that is what kind of turned into these packets with cabinet startups. So like it continues to bring rewards to the team and everyone involved. But it, sometimes it takes learning the hard way, but it doesn't have to require learning the hard way. As I mentioned, I can learn from other people. And once I started doing that, I started solving a lot of problems proactively. Yep. I can only imagine how much more difficult it would be to get to where I am if I didn't start learning from other people and just said, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They work in roofing, or they work in plumbing, or they work in electrical, not cabinet refinishing.
Yeah.
That sort of limiting perspective would have held me back in like a huge amount. So just kind of another emphasis I want to double down on is just the value of learning from other people. And if you're experiencing a challenge, let's say you think it's impossible to hire someone in your field, well, it's not. And find someone either in that industry or in another industry and figure out how they hire people. And it's really as simple as that. And then take their solution, and rather than defending your problem, emphasize their solution and apply it to your own business, and you'll likely get better results.
It's so funny because obviously I big Joe Rogan fan. I love listening to the podcast. One of the things he had a Mr. Beast on there who was a YouTuber, and I had not heard of Mr. Beast because I'm not, I do the YouTube for our channel some, but not to that degree. And one of the things this guy says, he's 23, he's got like 4 businesses all doing over 100 million a piece. And he was like, yeah, I mean, if there's somebody that's done what you're trying to do, you should go get mentorship from them because it's literally like getting the cheat codes. Like you can go do it yourself, but it just seems silly. And even with mentorship, and we see sometimes with students, we will take them through the binder, we will tell them things, and then they will go do it themselves, and it will end up not that great for them. But because they have that system to come back to, they can be like, oh yeah, that's why we're supposed to have them sign that paperwork that's already here that I can now go use every time. And so it's like the solutions are faster, right? It's just boom, right there you go. And I think it does. It makes obviously the results are there. It makes a massive difference.
So when it comes to creating processes, in other words, systems, another way of saying it could be to-do lists or a checklist. They all mean the same thing, but a certain way of doing something in your business, it is very likely that there is someone more successful than you in your industry, and you can go to them and ask them for help. You can pay them for help. If you are that resistant to creating systems in your business, you can pay someone to walk you through that. They'll likely take your money, but make sure they know what they're talking about. Make sure they're actually successful and they are doing what you're trying to do. And a lot of times you'll be surprised they'll help you for free. People love to help other people, especially if they're going to take action. And if you have a couple questions on how to solve a certain problem, let's say you're a plumber, you can go to a bigger plumbing company in your area, and you might be surprised what a quick email will bring you or what a phone call will bring you if you ask the right questions.
Yeah, you got to be trying, man. People like people that they're already trying to help themselves. And like if you are in a position where you currently, you own your business, but it's definitely a job, if you're the only one working in it, and if anything goes wrong, it's you pulling 90-hour weeks, like the first thing you always have to look at is, one, is my revenue consistent? Because usually, like, that's the first problem. If your revenue is not consistent, it's really hard to ever get to a point where any of this stuff matters. And so the thing is, how do I set aside enough money to invest in the type of paid advertising that's going to bring me consistency? And if you can't figure that out, ask somebody that's done it.
That's right? A good point. Yeah, that would probably, I would agree that should be the first thing on people's priority lists is save up money.
Yes.
If your business isn't producing enough money, then obviously figure out how to make more money. And if your business is producing a lot of money, but you somehow end up with very little at the end of the month, then figure out how to save more money.
Yep.
Because it's kind of crazy. We've come across members or clients that are making, $10,000+ a month, but they're ending up with zero at the end because they're either not managing things properly or they're not producing enough revenue. But usually it's management. If it's a really small business with one person working in it. Figured out the
conversations recently. Actually, we have conversations with people that, say, hey man, tell me how your business is going. What's it look like? Hey, it's really hard to look at that right now because, my business and my personal expenses are in the same account. And it's like, well, how could you ever know how your business is doing if you're funneling it all through the same account?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And that's still not a good reason to not know your numbers.
That's true.
Even if you are spending your personal bills are being spent on the business or vice versa, and it's all mixed together, like you still should know where your money is going and how much is left over and why you aren't able to pay some of your bills if that's the case, or how you're not able to save enough money towards certain things. And it's not an attack towards anyone. It's just something that needs to be realized so that you know what to work on next. If you're not able to produce more revenue because you're maxed out and you're doing everything in the business, then you have to figure out how to cut costs enough so you can recruit more help, or you can better optimize your time. It's one or the other. And right. So a lot of people, that's a good point that you brought up. A lot of people who are doing everything themselves, and we've seen this quite a bit, it's due to a lack of managing their finances.
Yes.
A lot of them have this belief that they can't afford a new hire. And from the outside looking in, that would look very true because they're not saving any money every month. They're spending it all. And so you need to figure out where exactly you're spending every dollar. And I guarantee you'll find, $100 here, $200 there, $50 there of money that maybe could be reduced or even extinguished.
Yes.
So that you can start to save up a little bit money, save $500 every month, give or take, so that you can build a little bit of a war chest to focus on the next project, the next challenge in your business.
Yep. Well, and the other thing that people can do is like, okay, if you have enough business, but the issue is you and you don't have money left over, like one of the things that people can look at is how efficient are you actually being on the job site? Because there are a lot of people that are super inefficient. We talk to guys who are like, yeah, I can't seem to get this job done in less than like 8 days. Okay, well, we do jobs 30% bigger in 5. So, either they're using the wrong materials, right? You have a horrible schedule, and again, when you accept that the problem is your responsibility, like if somebody says, hey, Wilson, you're screwing up because you have a horrible schedule, it's like, okay, I could take that personally, right? But also it's an opportunity to solve the problem. Like if you hear something and it hurts a little bit, that's probably a good sign because now you know what to look at.
Right. And if you go through everything and you find out that you are working as fast as you can, which is unlikely, there's usually always room for improvement, then maybe you're not charging enough.
Yep.
That is a possibility as well, is if you are doing everything at least to 80% perfection, then maybe you need to raise your prices so you can produce a little bit more profit. So I would look at that as well. Where can you cut costs? Where can you increase revenue? And then where can you optimize efficiencies within the operations of your business? But all of that is very hard to do if you don't sit down and go through it all, write it all out, so that you can look at things with a clear mind and not be so confused in your head, which is very easy to happen. And so, we just want to emphasize, rely on processes within your business. And once you create those and you create what some might describe as a handbook for your business, how to get these jobs done, how to pay your bills, how to set up your advertising, how to close or bring in more customers. There should be a bit of a step-by-step for each one of those areas within your business so that you can better find room for improvement and educate new hires and train them in a way that can replicate what you're doing so that you can alleviate yourself that much more and put more time into another area of your business, optimize that area, alleviate yourself a little bit more so you can put that time into another area. And you just rinse, wash, and repeat until you find yourself having a team. And now you're managing the system and you're working on the business and not so much in the business. It's a bit of a cliche now, but it is a reality that is possible for everyone.
Yep.
Should you choose to commit to that challenge. It's not an impossibility, but if you first believe that it's possible, and then you recognize that you're responsible for every part of this business, and you sit down and you go through the different parts of your business and write down how you do it, like we said, you'll find areas of improvement and you'll create a handbook that you can train people with.
Yep. Well, dude, it's cliche for a reason, right? Yeah. But those phrases happen again and again for the same reason. It's a very real thing. And it starts small. Like even the process you're talking about, creating a 5-step checkpoint for, hey, this is how I do my finances. Even if it's something that you're not giving off to somebody else, creating your own little checklist will help you do it faster. Because you'd be amazed if you don't have a system to what you're doing. It's very easy to get distracted and to wander off and start spending your time doing things that may or may not be related. And all that time that you're spending kind of amorphously working, but not working towards something, is time that could be spent working towards something.
Right. True.
Yeah. And that makes a big difference. But it's part of it's being honest with yourself, just recognizing where you're at. Right. And those are your checklists. Like, do I have enough business to keep myself fully busy? right? If the answer is no, number one thing you need to focus on is where you're getting your leads from, how you're going to increase your business. If you got that, the next thing is how do I cut my costs and increase my revenue? After that, it's how do I systematize everything? And after that, it's how do I find somebody that can do this for me?
Yep.
It's like, if you do those things, just those 4 things, you will have a successful business.
And you don't need any fancy tools or software or a consultant to help you do all of that. It really can be accomplished by you sitting down, use Google Docs if you like to type, use pencil and paper if that's more your style, and then you can translate that paper into something that's easier to store online eventually. But, whatever is more comfortable with you, you just got to get those structures out of your head so that you can, create a reference for people to follow.
Yeah, it takes, unfortunately, one of the reasons I think this doesn't get done is it takes a lot of discipline to just sit down and do it. But like the discipline that you take to sit down and do it will create eventual freedom for you, and the freedom will be fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of us become reactive to our day-to-day. Yep. And we might have a to-do list based off of what's needing to be done right now. And therefore, the things that become proactive or can be beneficial down the road are lower on that to-do list, because we need to go to the post office, we need to go to the bank, we need to go to this job site, I need to go to this sales appointment, and so forth. And by the time you get to the end of the day, you're hungry and you want to take a shower and go to bed. But the things that can really transform your business are the things that are a long-term focus, and it takes time to do it now so that it can help you later. And it starts with a conscious choice and really committing to creating the systems. Put it on your to-do list. For some of us, it might take a few weeks to finally start doing it, but if you see it on your to-do list, it's at least going to be a reminder of, oh yeah, I committed to that. Oh yeah, I'm going to do that.
And I like to put a tick by it every week. And so something, if it's there for 3 weeks, got like 4 ticks, it's like, oh my God, what's going on? And eventually,
that's a great idea.
Eventually you'll do it. Even the things you don't, because they're not always fun. A lot of times it's not fun. Those are the ones that get left behind,
I would challenge anyone listening to this to make that your first step. Put it on your to-do list to create systems for whichever part of the business. Just pick one.
Yep.
If you're a plumber, pick your most in-demand service, the one that you're doing most often, and create a step-by-step process for that. Same thing if you're an electrician. Same thing if you're a countertop installer or a window installer or a pressure washer, or you install gutters, or you're a house painter, whatever your trade is. And if you do multiple services, we talked about the benefits of specializing not too long ago. So I encourage you to listen to that. But even if you do multiple services, pick the one that's most popular within your market and create a step-by-step process for how to do that. And the first step before you get to that is put it on your to-do list, commit to it. And you'll find that you have a more likelihood to actually do it if you have a way of reminding yourself.
Amen to that, man. If that's the only thing anyone took away from this podcast, it will be a huge benefit to their business.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction. And we've talked about the benefit of creating momentum, regardless of how much progress. The only thing that we encourage you guys to do is create some form of progress, regardless of the size, and just putting that to-do item on your phone, or if you have a calendar on your wall, however you like to remind yourself on the things you need to do, put creating a system for X on that list today. And then we'll remind you, I imagine, in future podcast episodes, because it's such a crucial part of every business. It's going to keep coming up in the conversations that we have.
Till it sticks.
Yeah. Well, with that said, guys, I really encourage you guys to do whatever you can to move the needle just one little bit every day, every week, and get closer to your goals. And, it's Tuesday, so you got the rest of the week to make progress. I really wish you guys a great rest of the week. And if there's anything that we can do for you, shoot us over an email at support@cabinetstartup.com. We'd be happy to help you regardless of what trade you're in. And with that said, we'll see you guys same place, same time next week. Have a great one.
Bye, everybody.